Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Thanks for downloading this episode of the podcast. Today, our guest is Miami native, award-winning writer, producer, and director Jose Daniel Freixas. He is best known for being the co-writer and producer of the feature film MAGIC City Memoirs, which had Academy Award-nominated actor Andy Garcia as an executive producer. JD is the co-founder of Exilium, a South Florida-based film and television company specializing in developing, producing, and financing content for film, television, digital, and commercial platforms. Before we get to our interview, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the Film Florida podcast. If you're not already a member, please consider joining Film Florida at filmflorida.org. Don't forget, we have a Film Florida merchandise page. Visit teespring.com/stores/Film Florida to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and protective masks. Now here's my conversation with JD Freixas. Thanks for joining us on the Film Florida podcast, JD.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I'd like to start with your backstory. Tell our audience about yourself.
Well, my backstory, I'm born and raised in Miami, Coral Gables particularly. Yeah, I went to school in Miami. I went to high school at Christopher Columbus High School. I went to, shortly after, Santa Fe Community College in Gainesville. I transferred into the University of Florida. I had been into graffiti and stuff like that in high school. So kind of when I got to college, I had to figure out how I was going to make money. And advertising seemed like a good kind of mix of like a creative art and business. But when I was at the University of Florida, I just shortly learned advertising is more like marketing, like teaching you how to like sell goods and stuff like that. And that wasn't really what I was trying to do. I wanted to be more on like artistic storytelling, if you will. Movies started to really influence me, and I just started researching, how do people make money, making movies? Like, how does that work? So, you pick up a book here. That was like, I believe like Yahoo was the predominant search engine at the time.
Yep.
So, you go into Yahoo and you're like, what does a producer do? What does a director do? And I read a few books that like kind of crash course on like filmmaking and who does what, like the how-to guides, if you will. And I just read what a producer did. And I was like, wow, okay, I can do that. That's, it's artistic, it's business, but you're kind of like in the middle of like creative, but money. So it sounded like the move. I'm like, all right, perfect. I'll be a producer. That's what I'll do. And I was like, all right, well, I got to go to film school. I can't be in advertising anymore. So I ended up transferring to the University of Miami to their film school. I had a partial scholarship, thank God, very pricey endeavor. But that's kind of how I ventured into the world of filmmaking and whatnot. So that's kind of my upbringing, if you will. I went fast into the film aspect of it.
So when I look at your credits, some of your credits are as a PA on films like Hoot and TV shows like Dexter. Talk about how important those first PA jobs were for your career and kind of laying the groundwork to where you eventually would become.
They were everything. Actually, I'll take you before the PA jobs, the internship on the Transporter 2. My first semester in the University of Miami, I wasn't taking any like filmmaking classes. I was taking more like film history classes. And I remember it was like we were getting close to summertime. I got an email, like a kind of chain email, just like they do at UM, like talking about internships that are available. And there was this internship on this movie, Transporter 2. And, wow, I was like fascinated by the idea of working on an actual movie, a real movie. I emailed the production office. I didn't even know what a production office was at the time, really. Like all I had was one semester of like film history. Never learned how to make a movie, how it happens, how it works. I'd never been near filmmaking, like really like green. So I actually did an internship on a $30 million movie before I ever took a filmmaking class. So that was important, that sequence of events. So I go in for an interview. They like me. I was interviewing with like the PAs, really. The PAs that were there were interviewing me, and then the production secretary. They hired me. They said, yeah, come back on this day. I came back like 2 days later, and I just remember the first time I saw that production office, it was as if I had like walked into like a stock exchange, like just like, you know, people going everywhere and like offices and movement and the Xerox machine and just a phone ringing. You know, obviously the higher the budget, the more action. Remember
The
at the
more
time,
chaos.
Transporter 2, they had 3 floors in this Bank of America building that was in North Miami. It's no longer there. They've actually bulldozed the building since. But I was just fascinated. I was like, wow, I'm in a real production office. I can't believe it. And, you know, the PA that hired me is like, hey, sit at this table. When it rings, just say production, please hold, put them on hold, and just look at me and tell me who it is, and I'll tell you what to do. I mean, I must have sat there for like 5 hours, just like, production, production, please hold. And, you know, and I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I'm in a real production office. Wow. And so I worked there for a good minute, for like 6 months. I was there for the whole production. I would go daily, before school, after school. I would stay there on the weekends. Like they couldn't get rid of me. I like, you know, with PA, with interns, you have to be a little delicate because, you know, they're not being paid and you don't want to abuse their time.
Right.
I was opposite. I wanted to be there all the time. And and it was overnight shoots too. I would sit in the production office with the PAs and the production coordinators and the production secretaries, and I would sit there till 7 a.m. till they broke. So I was just super fascinated. And the internship is important in the trajectory because that's where I met EK, Elaine Carastis, Simi Wine, Miller, you know, some of these people that to me are like South Florida production legends and certainly would end up becoming mentors to me. So that's, you know, that's where I first saw these characters. I would serve them lunch and go do runs for them and stuff. And they play predominantly into the story as we go along. But yeah, from the Transporter 2, the following summer, you know, after a year of learning filmmaking or starting to learn filmmaking at film school, I got a call from Simi Wine, who was just like, hey, you know, I remember you from the Transporter 2. You were great. We couldn't get rid of you. You were always there. She's like, I got a paid gig, a PA gig, office PA on Hoop. And it starts, you know, on this date. And, you know, do you want to do it? And I was like, God, absolutely. Let's go. So I drove from Miami Beach to Fort Lauderdale every day for almost 7 months. I helped open the production office with Simi. I helped break it down and put away all the furniture. So I was there from beginning to end. And it was an amazing experience. You know, I got to meet Jimmy Buffett, which was really, really cool. You know, one of the production supervisors on the film, Kimberly Rock, you know, later in the story of my trajectory, she comes around because as I rise as a filmmaker, I run into her in like one of my deals at a network, and she remembered me being the PA. I mean, I remember when the hurricane was coming, I was unloading crates of bottled water into the production office, into the kitchen. And I remember her looking at me saying, hey, I used to do that too. Like, don't worry, you're gonna rise above and you'll be me one day. So that was like a really cool moment. And then later on, I end up at MTV with a pilot going, and I see her name on the budget sign-off sheet, and I email her and I go, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but you know, I'm this guy from Hoot. She was like, of course I remember you. So we got on the phone and we totally reminisced about our time in Hoot. So I know I'm going way forward in the story, but just to give context to your question about how important these PA jobs were for me. They were huge. They were huge. I don't want to keep talking unless.
No, those are
sure
great stories. Those are great stories. But after those, a couple of projects to get things going, there's this kind of middle range time leading up to Magic City Memoirs, which we'll talk about. But talk about those couple of years in between and how you found yourself and grew yourself from those early PA jobs to getting towards Magic City Memoirs. What was that in between time like?
Well, you know, I was learning how to make films at University of Miami, but they were happening while I was PAing because these summer PA jobs, they overlap into the fall because, you know, you're on these things for like 6 or 7 months. So back to Hoot, I had just wrote my first short film that had gotten selected for production at UM Film School. So what I did was I tried to leverage everybody in the Hoot office to help me with my short film. So
Okay.
Kimberly Rock, the production supervisor, I went to her and I said, hey, here's my short film. I'm going to shoot it in a couple months. Can you please read it? You know, it's 15 pages. She read it. She's like, I love it. How can I help you? And at the time, we were making films on film. You know, these short films were happening on film. So I was like, honestly, like, I know we have an account with Kodak. Like, do you think you can call Kodak and ask them to donate some film to my project? She's like, done. So she called Kodak. They donated like 5 rolls, which was huge. Because I mean, the University of Miami gave me like 3 rolls, and I came through with like 5 rolls from outside. So a lot of the producers on that project, not just Kimberly, would tell me. I was always very open with them about who I am and what I'm trying to do. Hey, I'm a new guy, first PA job, but I'm also making a short film. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be a producer. Can I have advice? Can you help me? I wasn't shy about like letting everybody know my goals and what I was trying to do. And it helped because, like, you know, one of the producers told me, hey, like, this short film you're going to do at don't waste time. Make sure that this is like your calling card. You know, raise money, put money into it, hire professionals. Like, you know, kind of just telling me to take it seriously. Don't take it as just like a film school exercise. Like, you know, try to go all out on it, which I did. So when that wrapped up, I poured all my efforts and money and time and connections into making this short film, Jamaica Motel, which was a big deal. It was a big deal for me. You know, we got written up in Ocean Drive and the Miami New Times and the Miami Herald. And in a way, it was kind of like the first wave of these like gritty films about people that are from Miami by people in Miami. And a lot of that also has to do with like Hispanics in the films, right? Like, so, you know, I'm Cuban American, I speak Spanish, and I know that we have this Spanglish slang, and it's very like slang words, slang terms. So I made sure all the characters spoke like that. And I remember when I unspooled that to a lot of people, agents from Hollywood, they were just like, what is this? And I even remember the Miami New Times writing like, wow, we haven't seen that many films that like really make it about the people that are from here. So that was like the beginning phases of what was building towards Magic City Memoirs. So like the following summer, I PA'd on Dexter and kind of envisioning what would be my next feature film. And it was supposed to be the short film's feature version, Jamaica Motel. I had raised some money when I graduated from film school. I had opened a production office. I was developing the script. I had been introduced to Brett Ratner. I had been introduced to you know, Mickey Rourke, like, you know, Miami people through like connections. And I was just banging on anyone's door that would talk to me to try to raise money to make this feature film. And I'd raised a good amount of money from developers, but that was about 2008 when the market totally crashed. So all the real estate guys pulled out. And so like I found myself pretty much with no money to make the movie after like getting really close after like a year and a half to like raise the budget. So I looked at the director of the film at the time, who was my partner, and I said, you know, we got to figure out how to make a way cheaper movie, like a couple $100,000. We got to make a super cheap movie. So that's when we started thinking of the story for Magic City Memoirs, like a Miami high school film, something that we can shoot for way less money. Wrote the budget, wrote the movie, understanding we'd only had so much, you know, money and resources. And we knew a lot of actors that had moved to LA and were starting out their careers and starting to have some success, people we went to high school with. So we were like, we can cast those people. We don't need money for expensive actors. So yeah, that's kind of that in-between time in a way before Magic City Memoirs happened.
So Magic City Memoirs comes out in 2011, and Andy Garcia is the executive producer, and you're a writer and a producer. Take a little bit of time and tell us how all that came together. You told us a little bit about leading up to it, but the Andy Garcia part about making the film, you know, for those that aren't familiar with it, tell us the story a little bit.
Yeah, so we were able to raise you know, a few $100,000, which at the time was a huge feat. That was like a big deal. That was 2008, really disastrous time in the country. You know, the real estate market had plummeted. The whole
Right.
country had plummeted into a recession. So the fact that we were able to get some money to make the movie was already a big deal. And then we just started like casting friends of ours, like Natalie Martinez, who has gone on to have a pretty amazing career for herself. I used to sit at lunch with her in high school. I did a stint. I did 1 year at St. Brennan's in between my years at Columbus. So I knew her from there. The director was friends with another actor, went to elementary school with him. It was just that type of deal that we were just finding people around us that were interested in being actors, who had skills. And we casted a lot of non-actors. A friend of a friend that we casted was Andy Garcia's daughter, Dominique Garcia, Laredo. So that's how we met Andy, really, because his daughter was in the film. It was the merits of the film that got him to want to be a part of it, because, I mean, his daughter has done a lot of acting, and he doesn't produce every single film that she's in, per se. There was also another actor that we were able to get through one of the cast members who had a relationship with him, was a guy named Julio Mechoso, who actually, he passed away about 2 years ago from a heart attack suddenly. And he was a phenomenal actor. If you don't know the name Julio Mechoso, if you remember Bad Boys 1 and 2, if you remember the two Hispanic cops that are always at odds with with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, we actually had Julio and Nestor Serrano, both of those guys from Bad Boys, were in the movie.
Yeah.
Playing two separate dads, because Nestor and Julio were friends in real life. And that was such a big deal to have someone of Julio's caliber, right? Like, Julio had worked with legendary directors. I mean, the names are ridiculous. And he blessed us in the film, and that really made the whole cast step up, because he was just such a pro and brought his emotions and his heart every day on set. And everyone just kind of had to grow up fast, because you had like this titan of an actor bringing it every day, bringing the emotion. I mean, one day he came off the trailer for the scene with his eyes watery, because he was just like ready to shoot, ready. He came out ready, and it just got everybody in that zone where it was like, oh, okay, like there's no time to play around. Because for the most part, the whole film was crewed up by very young people in their mid to late 20s, which the making of the film, I always like to say, we were so limited financially that like we made that movie with like a gun and a knife in our hands, because it was just like, we were just going to make the movie no matter what. And it was just that type of thing where there was sometimes, if we couldn't get the permit, we were going to shoot anyways and just hope we didn't get shut down. And there was a time we got fined. As a matter of fact, that's how I met Sandy Leiterman. It was Jeff Peel was the commissioner at the time, and she worked under him, and she fined us for something that we did on the Rickenbacker. We tore up some grass, didn't throw away some trash bags, and she came and fined us. And I was basically running from Sandy's office the whole time we were shooting, because we didn't have enough money to pay the fine. And so it was like, they were sending me notices, and I'm like, let's just get through this movie. Let's just like finish shooting this movie, and like we'll figure out what we do after. So I mean, that was the spirit of the film. It was like we were just gonna make it no matter what. And then in the last week, Andy Garcia wanted to come visit his daughter on set, and he did. I actually think it was the last few days of production. So he comes and he spends time on the set and watches the director Aaron, like what he was doing, watching what we're doing, just kind of looking over our shoulder. And he had lunch with us that day on set. We took him into the trailer, and he looked at some of the dailies and was pretty impressed. He was very moved by what he was seeing, and basically told us, like, when you're done with the film, take a trip to LA. Like, let me see your rough cut. Like, put together a rough cut. Let's look at it. I'll help you. I can introduce you to my agents. Like, just kind of like an open arms. Like, I'm here to help whatever you guys need. So, that's what we did. We put together the rough cut. We took it out there. I went and showed it to Brett Ratner as well, who had been very kind to me and given me time before. Went and showed it to Andy, and Andy just really wanted to be a part of it and offered to lend his name as an executive producer. He offered to lend his creative time and energy in the post. So we set up a cutting room in LA, and Andy would come by, and he wasn't there every day, but there would be like weeks where he was there Monday to Friday. Like, it was like boot camp. Like, he'd be there like at 9 a.m. He'd pull up, and Oh, we'd sit down and work, and then we'd have lunch and get back on it. So he really put like time and energy into it in ways that a lot of people don't. And when it came time to promote the film, he in many ways put the film on his back. And like, I mean, he really pulled it out. I mean, personally, I could say I'm eternally grateful for everything he did for myself and for the film. And you know, it's just not everyone does that. So
Right.
he was a big deal for that movie.
And then your next project after that, your next higher profile project was Vandal, also set in Miami. Tell us about that film.
Yeah, so you know that film was definitely percolating in my mind forever. It was a short film I had written at the University of Miami, and you know, with my background in graffiti, I had always thought about doing a film about graffiti.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like the advent of the idea, and then I was working on a project with my current business partner Tony Gonzalez. We were working on something else, and I kind of came to him with the idea about making the film, and he was interested in it. So we decided to put a script together, like put some development money together to get a script done. So we hired some writers. I got into the writing room and really just worked on the screenplay. And we finally got to a place where we felt like we had the script right. And same thing as Magic City Memoirs. We just had to start raising money and, you know, putting the whole thing together, which is always such a challenge, right?
Right.
Being an indie film. So while we're putting together Vandal, believe it or not, the corporation deal is happening concurrently in many ways.
Okay.
Which it matters because we were currently at the time talking with CAA to sign with them. They were so good to us on Vandal, right? They helped us cast that whole movie. You know,
Okay.
they helped us. They brought Yessi Ramirez, who won an Oscar for casting
Sure.
Moonlight. She's
Yeah.
Cuban from Miami. She was our casting director. And like she had just casted Moonlight the year before. Moonlight hadn't come out yet, but I knew of it. So Moonlight is a film that like kind of hung around the production of Vandal very much because most of the crew that had just gotten off Moonlight jumped onto Vandal.
Okay.
So it was like that film was like out there, and a lot of people that worked on us, and Yessi and CAA were so great in helping us cast the film and really put the movie together. Like we needed the right cast. And then at that point, we had a decent budget, you know, not like a Magic City, you know, like an ultra low, you know, we had a much better budget. I decided to direct this one. That was a big decision just because it was so personal to me, and I had been involved in writing the script, and a lot of stories that were either inspired by my life or by my friend's life that I was like, you know, I don't want to put this in somebody else's hands. I'd rather go down swinging with me at the helm than be doing it as a producer. So when I finally decided that I was going to direct it, I knew I needed to bring on people that really knew how to make movies. Because since I was not going to be day to day producing, but handling the directing, I wanted people I felt comfortable. So that's, you know, when I put the call into EK, I had always dreamed of making that phone call. You know, I just, you know, pretty much learned the game as a PA from these ladies. And you know, at the time, it's like the gift and the curse, right? Things were so slow in Florida because of a lack of an incentive, and you know, a lot of the big movies weren't coming to us. That EK was available, which that never happens. You know,
Right.
that's like that's pretty much like it was like a perfect timing because I did think it was a long shot, but I'm like, hey, well, if she can't do it, she'll recommend somebody that can, somebody that's, you know, lower level. But just at the time, you know, the business was just not going that way. So she agreed to produce the film, which was huge. And then she brought on Simi and so on and so forth. And we just put together such an amazing team of a lot of people that it's kind of sad because a lot of these people were Miami production people who had moved to Atlanta. So they had to come back and stay with friends and family in order to work on the Miami film because they had already moved to Atlanta because of the lack of funding here. So that's kind of like the people that were involved in it from a producing level and production crew level. And yeah, we shot the film in December 2016 and January 2017. So that was a while ago.
Yep.
Definitely a few years ago. And it was an amazing experience, really, just making another film in Miami, in a different Miami, It's obviously Wynwood was alive, and a lot of different era, you would say.
Well, you obviously have a fondness for Miami. I mean, you're grown up there. I mean, that's where it comes from, obviously. But talk a little bit about your desire to continue to film in Miami.
It's just it's what I know, right? It's what I know. It's I like it. I think there's so many stories that, because that's another thing. Not only do I want to film in Miami, I want to tell the Miami stories, because a lot of people film in Miami, but a lot of times they have nothing to do with what Miami
Right.
really is like.
Right.
Which is why I think Moonlight was such a big deal, because it was like, for the first time on such a wide scale, it was like a movie about people from Miami in Miami.
Yep.
It's like you go with what feels right, and I think there's so many stories that need to be told. It's similar to Billy Corben, he sees no reason to stop telling Miami stories when there's so many, and they're good continuously. I kind of feel the same way, but more on a scripted level.
Yeah.
And it's still underserved. There still hasn't been enough. There still needs more to come. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really slowing down in that sense.
Talk about, I mean, you mentioned it's actually been really fascinating to hear some of the names that you brought up from those early project or those early jobs that you had, and then to have them actually working on your projects as things have progressed. What was that feeling like for you personally?
Oh my God, it was amazing. It was great, because it's full circle, like these are the ladies that I used to serve them lunch. I learned the game from them. And then it turned around, and now they're protecting my film. Now they're the protectors of my vision, right? So that was just such a cool feeling, because I mean, I go back, we made the movie in 2017, and my first PA job must have been like 2003. So you're talking about 15 years we go back. It's so Simi and Ike, to have them on the film, calling me to talk to me about a location or about this or about that. It's like, it is kind of surreal. I'm like, man, I can't believe I have, because in my mind, they're the A team. They are the primo A team. If you're going to shoot a movie in Miami, that's who you're calling. So the fact that they wanted to work on my small movie, small for their standard, and protect and nurture my vision it was incredible. I still look back at it, I'm like, man, that was just so awesome.
And I'm sure if you could capture the formula, obviously you would, and you'd be selling it, because, but when people ask you about your success, I mean, what do you attribute it to?
Man, I don't know, because I'm not that good at like necessarily talking about myself in that way, but I can tell you some things that along the way have certainly helped. And I think just learning from the people that have been ahead of me. There's another guy from Miami called Barry Waldman, who's like a pretty big UPM. Actually, no, he's executive producing, all the Bruckheimer movies, all the Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, this guy's a monster. But he started out as a UPM, and now the level of movies he's doing are ridiculously huge. He came and spoke to us on a panel at University of Miami when I was in film school. And he just talked to the auditorium, and it was the same thing. Like what you're asking me, they asked him like, oh, how did you make it? Or what are your tips? What can you tell us? And there was something he said there that stuck with me all the way to today. And he said, if you guys, every time you wake up, if you're in this industry, you need to read the trades. You need to read Variety, Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, pick them. But you need to read this every morning of the rest of your life, because how can you be in this business if you don't know what's happening in this business? You need to know who's doing what, where, when, how, and ever since that day, I read the trades every morning. And believe it or not, I've actually taught myself a lot from reading these trades, as in a lot of deal making. I just read how a particular film was packaged, because they'll tell you, these guys held the rights to this book, and then they brought it to this producer, they partnered, they developed it, they hired this writer, they went and sold it to this person. They really lay out how this stuff happens. And that was, believe it or not, huge education for me. I've had a lot of industry people and colleagues and or not just tell me like, you know, a lot about this business for someone that grew up in Miami, you know, that you didn't, and I've never really lived in LA for more than 9 months at a time. You know, I've never never planted my roots per se in LA, but I've had people at studios tell me like, man, you know everything. Man, you're from Miami. How so? And it's really this. I read the trades and I taught myself. So that's had a lot to do with it. And you know, just like everyone else, like you gotta like put in the hours. You gotta wake up early. You gotta have a list. You gotta be organized. You gotta, you know, a big lesson that I've learned in the past 5 years. I've known this lesson, but I've known it the most is like, get ready to be told no, and get ready for people to tell you they don't like your script, they don't like your idea, they don't want to do business with you. Like the most common word you hear in this business is, yeah, we're gonna pass. You know, we're gonna pass. So just be okay with people passing on you, and don't let it affect you too much where like, you know, you can't get back to work.
Well, it sounds like a cliche, but you know, that the old adage of being the first one in the office, the last one to leave. I mean, you truly were that on some of those. That's what strikes me when we listen is your desire to do that extra at the very beginning of your career, which has led to that work ethic, which leads to more opportunities.
Yeah, man, you know, like you can like there's something about being the first one there and the last one to leave. People respond to that, you know, and for me, I'm just on top of my details. So like I want to be there, I want to see it, I want to feel it, I want to smell it, like before the whole thing comes on. And then I'm okay with closure too, you know. You know, it's very emotional once you finish a film, always. In this production business, you spend so many months close together as like best friends, and then it just one day to the next, bam, it breaks off. I don't know, I find it like cathartic to be always early and, you know, first one to arrive, first one to be late in many respects, to a meeting, to a business, to a production office, to anything. I mean, I don't know, I want to see the whole landscape.
And JD, for people who want to follow along with your career, is there a website or social media pages they should look for?
My Instagram is really where I put a lot of like my updates and like kind of stuff that's happening, and it's at JAYDEESN, or just, you know, Google my name, and my Facebook and my Instagram pops up. And you know, I have a company website, but we're always a little secretive on that, just because, you know, until something's like in production or sold, you don't really want to talk about too much of your development. But I do post updates regularly on my Instagram. So anyone, and it's open, anyone can follow me there.
JD, thanks for being on the Film Florida podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your experiences and your stories with it. This was great. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at teespring.com/stores/Film Florida. And please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.